That was my mother's pledge. She said, my children will never go to residential school. And we didn't.
Nice.
Yeah.
So she knew early on that
She
it was
knew,
it was
because she'd been there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, she went.
Yeah.
I see.
So, but she never lost her language because she didn't go there till her grandmother raised her till she was 10 or 11, 12. Friendship first started. I knew nothing about anything, right? And Ken, we had a meeting with somebody from City Hall. So Ken says to me, oh, because we used to be on the board too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, he says, come with me to this meeting. Oh my goodness. I said, yeah, okay. I mean, I just did whatever. I didn't even know what we were going there. He was going to talk about something that we needed from the city. Oh God. Thank goodness Ken could speak, really well, eh? And I couldn't. I had no idea what they were talking about, but I was there. Ken took me. Hey, Ernestine? Yeah. Oh, everything they were going over my head. Wow. When you're talking to somebody about funding, all those fancy words and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
But Ken knew what he was saying, but he'd say, hey, Ernestine. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like when I sat in on the board meeting.
I think Ken wants me to nod my head.
Yeah. Smile and nod.
Yeah.
So obviously with racism being pretty predominant over the years, we've seen in the last few years like sports teams changing their names, like we see like the Edmonton and Eskimos changing to the Elks, the Washington Redskins going to the Washington football team. What's your view on that, and how do you feel about the names still existing, like the Chicago Blackhawks, the Braves? Do you find those offensive? What's your thoughts on that?
Chicago Blackhawks? I don't think that's just about a bird, right? A Black Hawk. I don't know. Yeah, the Redskins got under my red skin. The funny name is, I don't understand. Is it the football team in Ottawa changed their name to Black Red or Red Black?
Yes.
I thought, what the
Red
heck
Blacks.
does that mean?
Yep.
Oh, yeah. I remember
That's the
that.
only one I'm thinking about.
Yeah, they used to be called the Rough Riders, but
Yeah.
I do believe...
Why did they change their name from Rough Rider to Black Red and Red Black? Or
So I think it's my understanding that the previous owner still had the rights for that name, and he didn't want to sell them to the current-
because there was another Rough Rider team, wasn't there?
Yes, Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. But
Yeah, what does red black mean?
I think it has something to do with the Rough Riders. That particular color has always been red
the
and black.
color of their uniforms?
Yes. Yeah.
So original.
Ottawa Otters or something different. Yeah. And the other one that used to offend me was who's the ones that had the tomahawk chop?
Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, that one. I thought, what the heck are they doing this stupid thing for? Yeah.
No, I agree. I remember when that whole trend started, like in the early '90s, like it was kind of like a cool thing to do. But now that you see more of it now, it seems very obviously racist. People
Yeah.
don't know what they're doing. They're just stereotyping. Which,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah, I think it has to do a little bit more than the stereotyping, right? Because it has to do with historically how Indigenous people were perceived through the Americas and through, even Canada, and how, we went from being savage, noble savage, like there's an air of mystery around
Yeah.
Indigenous people and the interpretations that you get, because you hear the fans saying, oh, we're honoring you.
Yeah.
you're honoring me. Like, my nation isn't even from, where Atlanta is. So when you say the Braves, that's a generic term. Who were the Indigenous people in Atlanta that would have been
Yeah.
something there? And I think that's part of the whole, thing that happens is this idea that kind of grows from that. And although the red blacks, I'm like, or the black reds, I'm like, well, that doesn't even make sense
I
to
know.
me.
I know.
I know.
It doesn't
And
make any sense.
I would not be the person to name a team. I'd be like, oh, we're the canoe paddlers. Like, I don't have that. Like, who wants to be part of a team that like that? So I think that there's there's more
Yeah.
to
The
more to
Chicago
that. Yeah.
Blackhawks, they're ones that have that. Well, that's not. I don't mind that.
It's a beautiful looking uniform.
Yeah,
like
the
it's-
logo. Their logo is nice.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah, Blackhawks. I think it's okay.
I think the ideology behind Indigenous people. I remember as a kid, we still played like Cowboys and Indians,
Yeah.
and nobody wanted to be Indians because
No,
they were
that's-
always
even
perceived
I
as
did.
like the bad guys, right?
Yeah.
Like
To go to India, yeah, that's another thing.
It's true.
When we were small, when we went to the movies, well, sure enough, I was on the cowboy side.
And another thing too, like I used to remember, like, because I was born in the '70s, and I remember watching like old rerun shows of like the Lone Ranger, and like Tonto was always his sidekick, but Tonto knew everything. Like, he knew
Yeah.
where to go. He would always save him at the end, so he was really like
He was the
he
hero.
was the hero. Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I thought, gee, isn't that funny? How that being native was just ingrained in you, that you didn't want to be, you were really, you were either stupid or evil or, yeah, they made us sound like we were really terrible people.
I know. I remember when I was in university and just doing some research about Indigenous people at the time. Back then, everybody used the term Aboriginal or Native, because I went to university quite a number of years ago. And one of the things that came up was the word heathen. Because I remember hearing that when I was little, that all Indians were heathens, and I was terrified of that
Yeah.
word. So by the time I got to university, I decided to look it up. And I think all it meant was somebody who wasn't Christian or wasn't part of the...
Wasn't civilized.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, I didn't know that's what that meant, but I remember having this like fear about a word because I remember hearing it around and stuff. And then
I remember our teacher once, she said to me, like, we used to have to, she'd be reading the Bible every day, right? And one day she said to me, Ernestine, are you a Gentile or a Jew? I said, I'm a Jew. Because I thought a Gentile had to do with reptiles and even know what that was. I said, I'm a Jew.
oh my gosh.
You were a reptile, or a Gentile. I said, I'm a Jew. Oh, gosh.
That's wild, not knowing what things mean and being
Yeah.
asked those kinds of questions. I think that's one of the things that I like about talking about things today is to find out, well, where does that come from? Where did that originate? Where did it start? And I think that's another thing that a lot of our young people, they want to know these things.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
sometimes we don't have the answers for them, but I think this is a good
know.
place to start.
Absolutely.
When I went to school, I had two older siblings, like my sister and my brother. They were about 7 years older than, like, they were close together. And so they had gone to school before me and my brother Harold. And so they had already taught me English before I went to school because they knew that if I didn't learn to speak English, and I spoke Ojibwe, that I would be, we'd get punished. Yeah, because I know I had a cousin. Her mother was never spoke English. Her mother spoke Ojibwe all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so when she came to school, her and her sister, they spoke Ojibwe all the time. And that teacher would forget, or she would forget that the teacher wanted her to say it in English, and she'd say, I don't know how many times she got hit. Yeah, so that's why I spoke English. When I started school, I already knew. Yeah, so I was taught before I went by my sister and my brother. Yeah, yeah. No, I'm talking about later on. I mean, I did go to grade 10. I took a 2-year commercial course because I wanted to get out working real fast, right? Then I got married early. And so then I hadn't been out into the workforce or hear people, you know. That's why I didn't understand all the big words that they were using. And
Were you in danger growing up of possibly going to residential school, or did you?
oh, that's why we moved to the city.
Okay, all right.
That's why my mother moved us to the city.
Okay.
Yeah, because after we finished grade 8 at the day school, then they would send the students to Spanish to do their high school years.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Okay.
that was my mother's pledge. She said, my children will never go to residential school. And we didn't.
Nice.
Yeah.
So she knew early on that
She
it was
knew
it was
because
bad.
she'd been there.
Oh, okay.
Oh, she went.
Yeah.
I see.
So, but she never lost her language because she didn't go there till her grandmother raised her till she was 10 or 11, 12 years. And then when her grandmother passed on, that's when the Indian agents would take you, if your parents died and you had no relatives to take you in, or even if you didn't have a means to feed yourself, or your parents were really poor, and they would just take you. Yeah, that was the Indian agents' rule. Yeah. So my mother was really my father passed away, when we were 3, my brother and I, my sister must have been about 15 or 16, and my brother might have been 12, and then I was 4, and my brother was 1, when my father, he drowned in Wasauksing area. That's where we were living. He was in the Army, the Veterans Guard, and he drowned there a couple of days after Christmas in 1943. So my mother was widowed, and then we couldn't stay in Wasauksing because she didn't come from there. So we had to move back to Cape, and that's where we were really, really poor. And the community, and she hid that because she couldn't get soldiers' pension, or when the soldier died, because they thought maybe my father ran away. What do you call that?
AWOL?
AWOL.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's...
Yeah,
That sounds
but they, took her a long time to get some money, and they finally found my father's body I think in 1950 something.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I think we were living in Toronto, so it might have been 53 when they finally found his body there. But she did get pension, after so many, I guess they had a big investigation or something. Yeah, so, and then she remarried, and then my stepfather he tried everything at the Cape. He had a boat. He took tourists out on, guiding, what they called guiding then, taking Shagnasha that came to the reserve to go fishing, he would take them out. And then, he got paid for that, and he tried to be a constable on him, but he was only about 5'6". Oh, God, there's lots of stories. Young people are so funny, eh? I remember my cousin Mickey was telling us a story. He says, they called him Magic because he could fix anything. He was a jack of all trades. But anyway, Mickey was telling us one time these boys were stealing apples, somebody's really nice apple tree, eh? And so he says, here comes Magic down the road there with his flashlight, telling us to get away. He said, we hid and we took all our apples. They threw apples at him. Oh, gosh. There's lots of funny stories that people do on the reserve, and they just laugh about it after.
And it's because it doesn't matter what reserve you're from, especially around here, you have the same stories. And it's not the same story as, there's something similar. I remember when, it happened like this over, when somebody else was different ages.
Yeah.
My cousins and I have had different experiences growing up in the city and on reserve and different things. But when we get together, we're always laughing about something.
Yeah. Yeah, lots of laughter. Yeah, even when, the miserable conditions, you would still find something to laugh about, eh? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did I answer somebody's question, or did I go on and on?
Well, I think it's perfect because that's part of why we're doing this podcast is we're talking about the idea of winter solstice, storytelling, going into the winter, and that's part of the sharing, right? Like it's when we get the opportunity to listen to stories, from people who've lived longer than we have.
Yeah.
And we talked about you moving to Toronto in the 50s and having grown up in the 40s, and I think, this is so cool because my dad was also born in the 30s. He grew up in the 40s, and he went to Toronto, but he went as more as an adult, and he was 18 when he moved there. So it's really cool hearing the stories, and there's like some similarities.
Yeah.
And just things are just funny.
We moved into a black neighborhood when we came off the reserve, and Jewish people lived around Spadina and Dundas area. I went to Ryerson Public School, and it's true. The first person who welcomed me, the teacher brought me into the classroom. I had long braids. And shy, I was really shy. And the first person who came and welcomed me was this young person, Joey Braithwaite. And he was, I guess he was black, but he was fair skinned. He had blue eyes. His mother was part white, I guess, or somewhere anyway, it doesn't matter. And he's, you showed me all the things that I'm supposed to do, Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I thought, gee, that's really nice. And so all those, his little sister became my friend. And I used to go to their house. Yeah. I moved into a multicultural, there was few Chinese people and Japanese people and different people from different places, eh? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I there was only maybe a couple of times where somebody would say, what nationality are you? Or that's what their favorite, Mm-hmm. And so I would say, I'm French and Indian. Oh, what kind of Indian? A red Indian or an Indian? I guess I'm a red Indian. And then I had a couple of people who did this around me. But it didn't last long, I think, because I was too shy to do anything about it anyway, so I just let it go, and they didn't, that petered out. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I moved over to I don't really have, I know, but that probably because I had fair skin. I think if I was dark, I might have had a harder time. Yeah.
I would say that
Yeah.
that's probably true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I found out I had fair skin when I was probably about 4 or 5 or 6.
Yeah, because I think I had a cousin who was dark. I think she had a hard time. Yeah. And my brother was fair skinned too. So he was okay. He's 3 years younger. But, and then my little half sister, she was dark, but I never heard her say anything. But then, you know, I was older, then I wasn't bothering with them. I'm a teenager
You're busy.
doing my own life.
Like I'm fair skinned, and a lot of people didn't even know that I am Indigenous until I would tell them. I would get like doubtful people, like wouldn't believe me that I'm Native. But I have 2 older sisters. My oldest sister, Catherine, she has a lot of Indigenous traits. So she experienced racism. She's 8 years older than me, but people would call her a BIF, a big Indian female. So she experienced
I never heard that
it.
before.
Yeah, I know. It's silly. Yeah, she experienced similar things to my father. Like the white crew would think that she was too Native, and then Native people thought she was too white. She's like right in between. But myself, I didn't really, and I also like I didn't grow up with the culture at all. Like my dad is very ashamed of like his Indigenous background, just because of the way he grew up. So I honestly didn't really know much about it until I went away for the summer when I was 17, and I went to my first sweat lodge, and that kind of just changed everything, and I took it upon myself like to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How does it feel when you are Indigenous and you want to accept and learn about the culture, but people don't think you are Indigenous? Is there like what kind of conflict and emotional?
Yeah, it's definitely
Yes.
challenging. Like it takes a lot of courage, I find, to go out and seek like knowledge from people in the Indigenous community when I hadn't even accepted the fact that I am Native, so I almost would feel like inadequate, like not Native enough, which I know is like a common feeling among people in our community. So it's definitely like it was daunting in a way, but to be honest, every Indigenous community I've been in is very accepting. Like I've never experienced really like direct like discrimination from the Indigenous community. I've always had very welcoming experiences. So I think that's more of a self thing than it is anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you're talking about that, Indian people, they really, on the reserve anyway, I think they really thought it was something if you had a white friend, being white was, like they really,
I guess.
how can I say that? They thought it was really, you were lucky to be white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because I remember my dad telling me, because my mom's white, like my mom's blonde, blue-eyed. My dad's dark-skinned, black hair. And he was proud to marry a white woman. He was proud to bring her into the family, and it made him feel like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
So I remember
it's
some of the
interesting.
old people would tell me, "Oh, Ernestine, did you know that your father was French?" And I said, I don't know. What is a French person? I didn't even know. I said, "Oh, yeah, my great grandfather was a Métis. He was half French and half Ojibwe. He spoke Ojibwe and he spoke French and he spoke English, and he was a secretary to the chief, who was also a Métis, William McGregor." And he has, there's McGregors on Birch Island.
Mhm.
They say they kind of think they had two families. Yeah, and the funny thing is these two Métis, I don't know if they came at the same time to Cape, but they were adopted by the Nawash of the Nawash tribe. They were adopted into, because I found this book about Métis people at Georgian College, and that William McGregor became the chief, and Fred Lemerandier became his secretary. I don't know what, in 1890s or something, in the 1800s. Yeah, but they two married sisters from Wisconsin, and Fred married a lady. Her last name was Mitsubishi or something like that, Mary Mitsubishi.
Mhm.
And the other lady's name was Philomene. And Philomene married William McGregor, and they had no children. William McGregor and Philomene had no children. So that was she was my father's aunt, or great aunt, or
Mhm.
something like that, because my grandfather's name was Ernest. He drowned, and when my father, so the land that I have at Cape Croak, Kinoshameg, was from Philomene. Philomene McGregor willed it to my father because they had no children.
Mhm.
And she was his only relative when he went to the First World War.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that's where I have a mixture of Potawatomi, Métis, and Ojibwe. I'm a mutt. That's what I call
Right.
So I have to
Yeah.
step out.
Yeah, Paige has to go to a training.
What a history, eh? I wish I knew more. I wish I knew more on my mother's side.
Mhm.
So my mother was Potawatomi too, Potawatomi, Ojibwe. But I don't know too much. I know she was a snake, Snake. Her grandmother was a snake. Or her mother was a snake, her father
Mhm.
was an Elliot. Yeah, my mother's last name was Elliot. And then somewhere in there, the Sandys came in. Yeah, because I think all the people used to always all be together at some point, eh? And then they all moved to different places.
Yeah, it would actually be interesting to hear like the some of the history about when they moved to the First Nations, because when I look back in Kinoshameg history or Wikonko history, there's all kinds of stuff about this area where they had meetings
Yeah.
with I guess whatever the government was at the time. So it could have been the Queen's representatives from England at that time. But then I also hear stories, or I've seen stories from they go to Mackinac Island up near Michigan, and there's just all of these points along the way, and it's kind of interesting because they did talk about traveling, and there is how long they would travel for certain meetings, because it's not like it wasn't easy to go from one thing to the other, and how long did things actually take back then? I think that's kind of fascinating.
Yeah, like how many, like how did they know they would have to send a messenger to community? Would probably take a month or something.
It could, right? Unless they were going by the water and by canoe in the water, or were they walking?
Yeah.
I just find that so kind of like fascinating.
What an interesting history we have. Yeah.
People didn't know. People always thought that I was either like Italian or like European or something like that, and so I never experienced like racism or stuff like that. My friends, when I grew up, after I figured out a little bit more, but I still didn't know anything about the culture really. But my nickname was Gurg, and they used to call me the last of the Mogurgians, because it was a movie called Last of the Mohicans. So they used to like kind of
Last of the Mohicans,
yeah.
Did you say?
But they kind of made fun of me that way, but just as a joke. But I never really had any kind of difficulty with growing up.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Barrie.
Oh.
But my heritage, where I get my grandmother was from Fort Albany, up on the James Bay, and she was Korean. We don't know a lot about her because she died when my dad was like 4, and she had a lot of kids, and she actually committed suicide, and so we don't really know a lot about her. But so I'm very grateful to give back. I know my band supports like my school, so I feel very blessed in that regard to give back to the communities from what it all stems from my grandmother essentially. So I'm very thankful for that.
Fort Albany, that's
far.
That's
James
far
Bay,
up, eh?
Yeah. That's one of the things I think that's really interesting about working at a friendship center, is we meet people whose ancestry is from all over Canada. Even with the people who work here, we have people who have ties to different parts of Turtle Island, and I think that's pretty amazing. And finding out your own history and your family history and different cultures, because we're in mostly here is Ojibwe territory, right? So we learn a lot about Anishinaabe teachings and practices and ways of being, because this is where we're situated. But when we get to hear from somebody else who may be Cree from either the Plains or even James Bay, it's kind of exciting, because hearing their stories, if they're passing through or coming by and talking, it's really great. And I think our lives are like really enriched by hearing people speak about their histories and things like that. And that's one of the other things that I really like about working in a friendship center and working here. And you never know who you're going to meet.
I know, eh? So many. When I go and visit my daughter in Calgary and I see the native people walking around, eh? I always want to say, "Ani." They wouldn't know what I was saying.
Well, they'd be like, "Oh, Ojibwe from Ontario."
Yeah. When you're talking about Turtle Island, this is funny. My son, Kevin, somebody where he works, he says to him, "Kevin, where's Turtle Island?" Kevin says, "Oh, I don't know. I think it's somewhere up in Weequamegon."
Oh, that's good.
That's
really good.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I enjoyed
This was. I'm amazed. It's kind of exciting just to sit and chat and get a
I'm
chance to
glad
listen.
you had me. I like talking after. Not all. I like to talk about the funny things. Jeez.
Oh, I love to hear about the funny things.
Yeah.
Those are some of the best stories.
Yeah.
You hear them. I think we do like to laugh a lot.
Yeah,
What's
so the
happening?
government's acknowledgement of the past, atrocities and trying to correct those mistakes. What do you think about that?
Oh, gosh. That's a hard one. I think there's so much to it. And it's still it's a hard thing to think to talk. That's what's hard to talk about, because you know what the history of our people, what damage they have done. It's and then to hide it, to hide things that they and blame us for the conditions that the Native people are living in now, that it's our fault, but it was their fault. And they have so much to do. They have this land acknowledgement, that's just not enough. They need to repay all these years that they have taken from the land. I always, just blows my mind that Native people are living in third world conditions, and the rich people are getting richer and richer off the land, and I don't see why the government doesn't give us a share, like a continual share, not the treaty money that they have in Ottawa. This is separate money that they owe from. No, I think you need another podcast, another more people to talk about that, because it's I don't want to say more than I
think you can.
Yeah.
Like
I know, it makes
Yeah.
me, I'm angry. I'm angry. And I'm not really trusting the government anymore. I used to think, that, they're doing a good job. They're trying, but they're not. They're just, they say one thing and then they don't do anything about it. They're just talk. We're probably the country with this climate change we're going through, and wouldn't be happening if people weren't so greedy. Don't get me started. It's greed that's done this to us. Greediness. They're not sharing anything with even though their own poor people, they're not sharing with. All this time, I'm still a Catholic. I have not renounced that. What I shall call my faith, what the heck did we call it? I take what I need from the Christian teaching and our Native teachings that I've found out. And I'm always thinking about how I put them together. I forget what they call that. Anyway, that doesn't matter. I talked to the priest at St. Mary's when they first found these missing children's grave in Kamloops. And my daughter, she put something on Facebook about St. Mary's. She says, I'll go and get some shoes over there at Value Village and go and stick them on St. Mary's steps. I don't know what she said on Facebook, but she told me she did something. So I phoned them. I phoned he's fairly new to me. I've never, maybe he was there about maybe a year, but I never really got to know him. So I phoned up and I said, Father Larry, I'm one of your Indigenous parishioners. I said, my daughter put something on Facebook, or put something on the internet or something. He said, oh no, she put it on Facebook. I said, oh. Anyway, I said, yeah. I said, well, she's very angry. And I said, and I just was thinking about, instead of putting shoes on your doorstep, maybe you should ask your parishioners to donate new shoes. Send them up to a place where, up north, where there's a need. I said, I'm sure some of your parishioners feel bad about this. So he said, I'll try, I'll do that. I'll talk to, I don't know who he has to talk to. Anyway, it came back and he called me the next day and he said, yes, that's what we're going to do. So that's what they did. They gathered, I forget how many 100 pairs of shoes and boots, and they shipped them, I think, to somewhere in Alberta, I think. Anyway, so then after that, he started asking me all kinds of things. And he asked me to read a reading at the following Sunday. I said, okay, I'll do that. He greeted me at the door. He said, I know I'm supposed to give you tobacco as an elder when I ask you to do something. I said, oh. He says, but I have no tobacco because I don't smoke. I said, well, as long as you acknowledge and that you know that's what you were supposed to do, it's okay. Anyway, then he started wearing those ribbons. They said then he got all the parishioners to wear ribbons. So he's been and then he had a circle. He says, there's only another parishioner that I knew that was there. I don't know if you know Herman Robinson. He goes there with his wife, Mary Jane. Anyway, he said, oh, if you can find some people in the community. And then I asked a few people, they didn't want to come, so I didn't bother. And I went on my holiday. I forgot all about it. And then I got a phone call from Herman. He says, are you going over to that circle tonight? I said, what circle? He says, the one that Father Larry wants you to come in. He said, I said, oh. I said, I forgot all about it. He said, well, he says, well, he asked me to come. I said, oh. I said, well, I'll come and support you then. So we went. And so they had all these people that came, they're head of ministries and stuff, all in a circle first we did a smudging outside. We did a teaching on the smudging, and so everybody smudged, and then we went inside. And what they did was they said, we're not here to have a debate. We just want to listen to your stories. And so I started I think Herman started first, and then I did. So I just told him everything I thought. I said, well, I'm just going to be on the thing there, eh? I told him everything I thought. I didn't hold anything back. And, and I told him about the day school. I didn't go to residential school and that stuff. And then Herman shared his story. And then when we were finished, then they said a prayer of reconciliation or whatever. But I thought, okay, so now they know, and then the people that were there, I'd never been so popular Oh, it was really nice though that they want to know stuff, and then the Catholic Women's League wanted me to come and share a teaching on one of the. So I said, well, I can do the 7 grandfather teachings with you. So I did that with the Catholic Women's League. So it's you have to understand that they didn't know these things because it wasn't taught to me. I didn't know either till I started doing blanket exercises with the Kairos. All these things that were done to people, that it was one of the popes that signed the bill that it was okay to go and take your country. And which I said, yeah, but I said they learned that in the Bible. It's in there that God his people, and they went and took other countries for the Hebrew people. They took, oh God, it's we just all need to understand. There's a lot of understanding that needs to go. I guess it doesn't accomplish anything if you do anything with hate. You can be angry, but hating something that wasn't, like, all people didn't know about it. And that priest, he said he didn't know anything about it. They didn't teach it at St. Augustine Seminary. And there was a young person from that seminary that was there, and it's social distancing, right? You're nobody, but he came up, he said, could I give you a hug? I said, sure. And he went back, and now he's the head of educating new seminarians about all this stuff. Oh gosh. So it is good to talk about it, not to. And then, now that I'm older, I can say whatever I want, which is a good thing, eh? Yeah. So the other thing that I said was that it shouldn't be us to go to Rome and beg the Pope to come here. That should have been on their part. But then I heard that it was the Catholic bishops who wrote a letter to the Pope and asked them to come here. But then I don't know who's going over there anyway. They just probably want a trip. Chance to get out of the country.
Yeah, go visit somewhere
I'll
else.
say that. Is that going to be on my podcast? Yeah, so they're going there anyway.
That we're trying to do is one, having the conversations. We need to be able to have them with each other, but also to be able to talk with them with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing we haven't been able to do because, one, so many of our people are busy trying to survive, trying to get over the inherited effects of
Mm-hmm.
things like residential schools, things like 60 Scoop, all of these things that just keep providing an impact for our people. And it's difficult to say, those are tragedies. Those are horrible things.
Yeah.
But trying to also look at your own life about, the displacement stories. We heard from 2 people today about their own history and their own grandparents and parents, and about how that actually contributes to who we are and how we interact with each other.
That's right.
And I really do believe in education and talking about things, even if they're uncomfortable for us
Mm-hmm.
and uncomfortable for people. And I have no idea really what our intention is with the podcast, other than we need to start talking, providing things to our community, getting people involved, and just having a different avenue for doing some of these things. And
it's good because everybody has a different way of looking at things, eh? Like, maybe somebody doesn't think the way I think.
But that's why we bring people in.
Yeah,
even how
everybody
we,
has,
you
and
know-
everybody has different ideas. Somebody would, yeah.
Well, I was joking around with my husband the other day, and I said, we were talking about consensus. And I remember growing up, because I grew up in a educational activist family. Always believed in culture and education and how are we going to do these things, you know. My grandmother worked in post-secondary and in education, and so, you know, we always had these like, okay, we have this issue, what are we going to do about it? And one of the things I remember hearing growing up was consensus. And my interpretation when I was a kid was, oh, they're just going to talk all night again, you know, because that's what they did.
Yeah.
And so trying to explore the understanding of what our people were doing then, it was about sitting in a circle and hearing from everybody. Because if we're trying to make a decision, you know, we have to know what are the possible outcomes of everything that we're doing. It can't just be, we're only going to listen to somebody with the degree, or we're only going to listen to somebody who's on the trap line, or we're only going to listen to that one
right.
specialty. We have to sit down and listen to all of the people that have, and it's not an opinion, they're coming with their experience, they're coming with, you know, their own lifetime of knowledge. Maybe it's our 10-year-old, maybe it's our, you know, our great-grandmother in the room. We don't know, but we have to be able to do that. And that's one of the things I think we're missing when we're trying to come up with these, you know, these ideas moving forward, whatever they're going to be.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm rambling right now, but I think that we have to start somewhere, because we haven't been able to do these things, and I think it's great that we were able to start this process. And then the other part of the thing is like, well, let's just see where it goes. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
we don't know what the actual real outcome of this, you know.
Yeah.
People on our Facebook page and people we've talked to about this already are like, oh, I want to listen. I want to subscribe. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. I don't know how this is going to go down.
Yeah.
But I'm
Right.
excited to start talking about it, and especially bringing in, you know, the Indigenous way of understanding things, like that idea of consensus and what that actually really did look like. Because I've read some of the old history textbooks or reports that were written on the treaties and written on these things, and they talked for days. And I wonder, what did they talk about for days? Like, what did you consider in that, you know, several day-long process? Because now we meet, in the way we do things, we meet every couple of months for an hour, for 2 hours, and we have very specific agenda items, and everybody says, oh, open it up to, do you have anything? But it comes down to, do you agree, yes or no? Okay, if it's yes, we're going to move forward with it this way.
Yeah, right.
If it's no, oh, maybe we need to reevaluate something, and that's kind of how we do things right now. But
Yeah.
like, I think it would be really incredible to hear from more people about their experience,
You're right.
about their thoughts,
Yeah.
and about how we do things.
Hmm. Yeah, you could talk to, like, younger people,
Yep.
get somebody in here with, oh, gosh.
But I mean, like what I'd like to come through in either the first episode is that there's humor in everything that we do, and we like to tell funny stories, maybe. But there's also some tragic history that we're
Yeah.
still living with, and then also something about the history of the Friendship Center. I don't know if those are individual
yeah.
things or how we're going to work those through,
Yeah.
because there's lots of different things. You know, like
Yeah.
Paige has been only here for 4 months. Greg has been here for
Just over a year.
just over a year. I've been here for 5 years, but you've been here since the beginning. So I
Yeah.
think it's kind of cool that we have
Yeah.
this element
Mm-hmm.
that was there. So